Oh, we're going live on the others. Right here on TikTok. We're going in 3, 2, 1.
All right, we there?
Yes.
We're all set?
Mm-hmm.
Hey guys, I hope you're all having an amazing day on purpose. Welcome to the January update of what we see going on in the world. Man, do we have a lot to go over. I'm going to try to do these at least monthly. And man, I want to keep it short, but also have tons to cover. So we have a new president. Trump survived the inauguration. There were no new assassination attempts, thank God, or at least none that we're made aware of. He is now our president, and man, has he gotten to work. Let's go over some of the things that he's going to be working on. The Biden administration was so inept and woke that our economy is in the toilet. The BLS has had to lie about the jobs numbers to prop up Biden's legacy and make him look like he was okay. I mean, right now, so much of the hiring that we've seen has either been a revised away or was government or healthcare jobs that we probably have been going through in the last year a labor recession of some kind or another, or maybe about to enter one. We don't know because we're not allowed to talk about what a recession is because the Biden administration, when we did have two negative calendar quarters, said, well, that's not the technical definition of a recession, so words don't even matter again. It's no different than but don't ask questions. Questions are a fundamental need in scientific method. So, what is Trump working on? What is the Biden administration left him with? Trump has basically sealed the border. He's declared an emergency. He's used executive order, which I'm sure is going to drive tons of different lawsuits because he signed, like 200 executive orders in his first day after the inauguration. So we'll see some legal fights over what's constitutional, what's breach of precedent, and we're going to see like what stands up, what doesn't. But at least in the interim, the border is going to be shut. I mean, we're going to see less immigration, less illegal immigration. They basically stopped it. They've plugged the hole. Do I think that we're going to see mass deportation? Honestly, I do think we're going to see a very aggressive approach of them capturing criminals, anyone with a criminal record, a background of violence, or anything like that. And then once we've gotten enough press on that and we've seen crime rates drop, I think they're going to ease off. I don't think they're going to talk about easing off, but I think they'll ease off a little bit because there's a tremendous amount of pressure right now from corporate America to deliver workers, low-wage workers. Yes, the corporate elites do not want high-wage workers in America making more money, and there is supply and demand in labor just like there is in everything else. So do I think that we're going to see mass deportations? I think the media will cover it all as mass deportations, and you never know, maybe we will, but I don't think it's actually in the best interest of American manufacturing if that's truly Trump's goal to deport all the laborers that the big corporations would need to make the things that he wants us to now make here, especially if we're entering into what could be a global trade war. What will a global trade war do? What is this tariff talk that we're all seeing? Well, tariffs are, it's effectively a tax. He's launched this thing called the External Revenue Service, which, when you run a business, it's like running a government, right? You need to bring revenue in. The government he was handed had, $7-8 trillion worth of expenses, $4-5 trillion worth of, actual income. So we were always running a deficit. So he needs to find a way to cut that deficit, end the deficit, balance the dollar. And one thing he's doing is he's looking at tariffs as a way to do that. He's going to use it to, close the gap that we have with nations that we gave great benefits to during World War II. I mean, right after World War II, when the world was bombed, we allowed for some inequalities in trade relationships, and frankly, our government has never right-sized those. So there is already an imbalance to trade. I mean, you don't see a bunch of people in Europe driving Ford Mustangs or Chevy Camaros, but you see lots of people driving BMWs here in America. So some of those trade inequities are going to need to be balanced, and it's probably a good thing that he does it. What he's talking about with his tariffs on Mexico and Canada, he's basically, some of that's about fentanyl, border crossings, things like that. He's trying to engage them to help us close those borders. And let's be real, he actually pushed the tariffs back to February 1st. So he didn't enact those day one. He's giving Sheinbaum and Trudeau, or whoever replaces Governor Trudeau, the opportunity, yes, I said Governor Trudeau, and yes, it's a joke. He's giving them the opportunity to come back to the negotiating table and take him seriously. The reason that they would need to take him seriously is because right now we have a 27 to 29 trillion dollar GDP economy, depending on who you talk to. We have, Canada and Mexico are both around 1.5 trillion. Of that 1.5 trillion, I think it's like 1.4 and 1.6, respectively. Of that 1.5, about a third of each of their GDP is trade with the United States. So if Trump puts a 25% blanket tariff on them, that would immediately crash their economy. So they have a month to come to the conversation table. What does that mean for us? What does that mean for entrepreneurs? What should we do with this information? Well, we should get ahead. I mean, we should be ready for change. There's so many changes happening right now. I mean, one, you have Doge trying to shrink pork spending, get rid of government waste. Two, you have Trump stopping government hiring, so that's going to be damage to the labor market. We'll see what that does to jobs numbers. Three, you have the beginning of tariffs being threatened and or hitting. Four, you've basically got all regulators put on notice saying, you're not to, impose any new regulations without getting them approved by the Trump administration. I mean, and five, you've seen energy basically get unleashed. Now, we haven't seen necessarily all the investment go back into energy, but Biden was very strict on American energy. He shut down pipelines. He banned drilling on federal lands. I mean, a lot of money had been invested in those lands that we knew there was oil-rich areas that we could have used American energy to, basically lower energy costs for Earth. And also, when energy costs are low, oil-producing nations, and largest thing he needed to do to bring the I'm going to say war economy globally into balance and show the warmongering nations that you don't have an unlimited budget to keep doing what you're doing. So if he wants to bring peace, which, depending on who you think brought the Israel-Palestine peace, it could have been Trump, it could have been Biden. I guess it was Biden's plan, but Biden wasn't able to enact it, probably because he wanted to retain the Jewish vote. And if he did, it didn't help him anyway. He still, the Democrats still lost the election. Trump did say if that war doesn't end, then, before I get into office, there will be hell to pay on both sides. And so whoever takes credit for that, one war down, one ceasefire has happened. Hostages are being returned. So that's really good. That's going to stop disrupting trade. Hopefully the Houthis will stop launching rockets at boats. And you'll see, with lower energy cost and shipping that is less dangerous, an improvement in goods and services being able to move back and forth. And the global economy will go up. He has talked already about sanctioning Putin. I think that's honestly a bunch of crap. Putin is not going to be affected by sanctions. You cannot sanction or tariff or do anything to somebody who you're not buying or selling goods with. I mean, we basically have almost no goods or services that we're exchanging with Russia. So what are our sanctions going to do? Nothing. But I think that is just Trump negotiating and firing a shot over the bow and saying, hey, dude, it's time for us to talk. I don't think that Trump has any real leverage outside of producing tons of energy and getting energy-consuming nations to buy from us instead of Russia that will, in the short term, get Russia to stop the war. Russia is winning that war. Ukraine is losing that war terribly. And while there's momentum, there's really no reason to back off. So I think what Trump is doing by saying, I'll put sanctions, is kind of throwing out a BS threat and saying, hey, maybe now's a good time to talk. And while I think that the actual threat of sanctions is a joke, I think it's the perfect way to enter a conversation and start with a conversation. Do we have a question or a comment?
Comments.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, give me one.
One said, read, dude, those lands were never drilled nor going to.
Okay, well, I mean, the executive orders he signed say differently, but I guess I'll learn to read. Thank you for your stupid comment. If there's any other stupid comments, feel free not to ask or bring them up. I'm happy to respond to any good comments or anything intelligent that somebody has to say. I know there's a lot of hatred out there, but hatred is normally born of ignorance or stupidity. Like, those are the only two sources of pain. I try to look at the world as it is, and as somebody who studies economies, governments, people, business, and how money is spent, that's my framework. So, I mean, thank you for your comment on my ability to read. Maybe go find something more productive to do than scrolling on social media like some kind of loser. All right, so onward to any intelligent comments?
Trump is an isolationist. This put us in jeopardy on so many levels.
Trump is probably certainly a narcissist, and Trump definitely has a giant ego. Trump is not an isolationist, at least not according to his first 4 years. I mean, maybe he will be more isolationist this time. I don't think so. Trump wants trade, but Trump wants fair trade, at least as I've seen it. Like, you have to understand, like, during World War II, when the rest of the world was rebuilding and they had all been bombed to hell because they were in the war zones. Like, Germany didn't invade the United States. Japan didn't invade the United States. Like, they bombed Pearl Harbor. We got into the war, but our factories were not bombed, our houses were not bombed, our cities were not destroyed, the rest of the world was. So we offered exceptional trade deals to everybody, and unfortunately, our politicians never right-sized them. So I don't think he's so much, at least yet, like, we'll see what comes, and I'm not going to say that it can't happen, because in theory it could. I think the threat that his ego could get triggered and he could become more isolationist if lots of countries don't work with him could be present, but I don't think he has demonstrated to be an isolationist as of yet. But I mean, I appreciate the thought in theory. Another one?
This one made a couple comments.
Okay.
Tariffs made the Great Depression worse. Smoot-Hawley caused a contraction of international trade and a 67% reduction in U.S. imports.
Okay.
We have been drilling at record rates in the U.S. over the past
We have
2 years.
we have been drilling more, but why are we drilling more? We're drilling more because when gas prices hit $5 a gallon, Biden realized he was going to lose the midterms, so he opened up a little bit. He still made it very difficult for permits. And the way that markets work, guys, and this is just a fact, I get that everybody's going to go stream whatever they heard on CNN or MSNBC or whatever the DNC put out for people to say, but don't go with taglines. The way that markets work is when you shut off permitting on something somebody else has already invested in, like, that's going to disrupt a futures market. So yeah, we've always been a major producer of oil. Trump had us on the way to energy dominance. That is a good thing. Like, we're not at a point where we can just go and get rid of oil. We might be in 10 or 15 years, depending on technology, but right now we're not. Not unless you want to starve 50 to 70% of the population. So anyway, like, let's pause the comments, because I mean, it sounds like you've got the DNC commenting over there, and there's really no point in responding to them. They're still triggered. Let's let them. Are there any intelligent ones? Like, I'll hit comments, but.
One is asking, do you think Trump will reduce the income tax or get rid of income tax? What do you think?
The Trump tax cuts are probably on the table. I don't think they're the first thing. I mean, the Biden administration to the average American, to the average consumer, was damning. I mean, prices went through the roof. The rich got richer, assets went up, and that was a result of government spending, and that was a result of supply chain issues, and just this mixed bag of ingredients really left the American consumer struggling. So I think Trump's major priorities, one is going to be getting energy flowing. Why? Because when energy is flowing, every country in the world is producing and contributing to the markets. When energy is expensive, third world countries are not going to be producing. You got to remember, like, 2/3 of Earth, as of like 5 years ago, I haven't looked at the actual statistic in a few years, but lived on less than $2 a day. So even if there was 50% inflation in the last 5 years, maybe now it's $3 a day. But those people are not going to pay more for energy. They will be productive in the markets, which is why you can buy cheap crap at Walmart when energy is cheap. When energy gets expensive, when it doubles in price, goes up 50% in price even, you see a substantial portion of the population no longer contributing to the markets, and thus inflation, right? So his number one thing is going to bring energy down. His number two thing, if he's smart, based on my prediction, is going to be to stop the wars. And there's multiple wars, guys. Like, there's not just shooting wars. We had 2 of those going on. But there's also trade wars and tech wars. You know, who did he have sitting behind his kids at the inauguration? All the tech billionaires. I mean, we know that big corporate America has always been in government, and now we're seeing them in government. Like, you know, I don't think they haven't been. Obviously, the military-industrial complex was behind the Biden administration. Look how many billions of dollars went to Ukraine when we needed it. Maybe in the LA fires, maybe with hurricanes, you know, maybe with things that actually affected American citizens just as much as a Ukrainian did, and Ukrainians aren't American citizens. So we know who's had their hands in those politicians' pockets. And now it's a little more transparent. We know who has their hands in Trump's pockets. They're announcing different innovations that they want to do, and creating a cure for cancer, and, you know, mRNA vaccines for that. And I mean, I don't know if I agree with that or disagree with that, but I'm at least interested in seeing what's going to come next on it. I think his third priority, after he figures out both energy, which is huge, and ending the wars, which are disruptive and highly inflationary. I mean, you have to think, Ukraine produces how much seed oil, produces how much corn that is not going to the markets, produces how much wheat. I mean, they were one of the major food producers on earth. So if you want to slow some of the inflation contributors, end the wars. After that, he's going to worry about how to make things affordable again for the average consumer. He needs to get back to where we have a social contract where the rich are not getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, but where everybody is going up. A rising tide raises all ships. I do think that tax cut will lead to hiring. I think that he needs to get the dollar in line so that, between that and employment and inflation, potentially we can start getting rates back down. He needs to showcase that with his external revenue service, it's not going to be blanket madman tariffs, but it's going to be intelligently placed tariffs, which are there to balance trade relationships, make them easy, support American companies, bring companies that are outsourcing that shouldn't be back to America and create American jobs. You might get some inflation with that, but it's not going to be the unhealthy kind where the rich get richer and the poor go broke, and you have hatred and people starving. I think the next big thing he's going to have to do is bring back affordability. And that's where I see the tax cuts and the External Revenue Service working towards that. So I don't know if that answered that question, but I think it's at least in line with that topic. Is there another question, Alexis?
What is your prediction for the housing market?
My prediction for the housing market, I think 2020, good question. I love that question. That's a smart question. 2025 is probably going to mirror 2024. The housing market in 2024 had a 35-year low for single-family home sales. So, I mean, if you think about that, like 2008 wasn't 35 years ago. We sold more homes, single-family homes, in 2008 than we did in 2024. So we didn't have a recession, because a recession generally means that things went down by a certain percentage, right? We had a stall. We had an economic stall. There's a major affordability crisis. And housing, interestingly enough, is a leading indicator of what the economy is going to do. And so seeing that housing is stalling, it's an indicator that, hey, other things are going to start stalling. Seeing credit card debt at record levels is an indicator that other things are going to start stalling. Seeing buy now, pay later, which is a bigger thing than most people realize. Like, it's just another type of credit card. It's another type of financing. That's an indication that one of these days, the money runs out. The lenders stop loaning. The debt economy will not work unless you bring back affordability. But I think 2025 is going to be like 2024, because if the Biden administration was a car wreck, you don't skip out of the car after a car wreck. If you survive it, and luckily we did, you go to the hospital and you spend months, maybe years there, recovering, going to physical therapy, and getting things fixed. Now, the long-term fundamentals for housing are very, very good. We have had reduced supply for many, many years. And in any real economic situation, supply and demand is what truly matters. So supply and demand are the two major forces that you have to understand to explain economics. You have government, they come in, they manipulate things, and that will have a major effect in the short term. But supply and demand are the major factors. America has not met supply need based on birth rate for housing since '08. We've had about a 500,000 unit disparity in housing since '08. So both President Trump and Kamala Harris, when they were running for office, said they needed to fix the housing market. They had very different approaches to it. I think Trump's is going to be more painful in the short term, more beneficial in the long term, because it will create long-term health. If you're in the housing market and you intend to build homes or sell homes or flip homes or any of that, and you have a business, I would tell you, get lean, stay the course, get ready for 2026, when Trump can appoint a Fed chair that's going to be a little more, interest rate friendly. Be prepared for some inflation in the short term. Be prepared for, potentially additional rate stalls. I don't think they can go up because the economy will crash. But I don't think they can go down quickly either, because Jerome Powell and Donald Trump have their disagreements on what's what. And hopefully they can come together. I hope he negotiates something with him. But unless something massive happens and a recession happens now where there's a huge Fed pivot, the housing economy is not going to open up in 2025. Not significantly. We will see, I think, I mean, based on the economists I follow and I trust, I think you're going to see rates get to probably low sixes, high fives in a best case scenario by the end of 2025. And I think you'll see some additional momentum then, So we'll have a pretty good fourth quarter, but the first three quarters are going to be kind of this a mirror to 2024. Hopefully that answers that question. That was a very good question. Are there any other economic questions that I can answer?
Do you think leaving organizations like the World Health Organization and NATO will hurt us?
So far, I don't think we've left NATO. I mean, unless I missed an update today. Leaving the World Health Organization, I don't know. I will tell you, I think the World Health Organization probably did some things wrong during COVID. I think there was a lot of things that were done wrong during COVID. To be fair, though, it was the first time in, 100 years that we've had a global pandemic. And I think there was definitely a virus, and I think it was definitely dangerous, and I think there were a lot of deaths as a result. It was not the Spanish flu. It was nothing like the Spanish flu, and we reacted to it like we would the Spanish flu. And I think the World Health Organization has a lot of fault in that. And I think, there probably was collusion with different governments. And, I'm not behind the scenes enough on the WHO to know what problems could arise from that. But I will tell you, we need to have balanced, common sense health information in America. I mean, America is one of the least healthy countries on the planet. I mean, it is sad, the food we consume, the diets we have. I mean, if we have something good to replace the WHO and maybe even improve dramatically on what they were doing, I think we'll be fine. I don't think it had a major impact on any single American's lives. Next question.
Do you think Trump will successfully try to take out Maduro again this time?
Do I think Trump will try to take out Maduro?
Mm-hmm.
Maduro threatened to invade Puerto Rico last week, and he said he was going to, I guess, invade Puerto Rico with Brazilian troops or something based on the article that I just brushed over, or liberate Puerto Rico, which is a joke, but he's definitely poking at Trump's ego. And we all know that Trump has an enormous ego. And if Maduro's a fool, then he will pick a fight. Like, the Venezuelan military has nothing on the American military. And if he picks that fight, he will lose. So I think if he keeps his rhetoric up, yeah, Trump will probably do something. I mean, when you go and, pick at the guy with the biggest ego in the room, I wouldn't sit and expect for him not to react. There will probably almost certainly be a reaction. I think the only reason we haven't seen anything after last week's episode is because Trump's busy. Let's hope he doesn't get bored, or Maduro might have some issues. Very good question. Another one? What's the next question?
How much economic policy do you think he will be able to achieve before the midterms?
So it depends on what you mean by economic policy. Like executive orders, he signed more executive orders than Biden signed in 4 years in one day. If you're talking about getting economic policy through Congress, that's a big ask. I mean, they've got their big, beautiful bill that they're trying to pass, but of course there's different congressmen that are sticking the muds, that are wanting something for their district, and that's where we get pork in our government. And so that's where I'm really interested. Nobody knows the answer to this, but I'm interested to see how Doge affects. If Doge, which is now just Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy has backed out, comes around and says, "Hey, you're going to do this," and it is an actual government department now, but it's a government department in collaboration with Musk. But assuming that Musk comes in and says, "I'm going to support an opponent of a politician that gets in the way of the best thing for the American people," and he has popular support for it on X or other platforms where he's loud, then yeah, I think that Trump will get a lot through Congress, because even though he has a slim majority, he has a guy worth $400 billion that's willing to back his agendas. And at the end of the day, there is money in politics. I mean, look at how much damage one man can do in politics. If you look at George Soros, who was arguably at his peak worth 35, 36, maybe $40 billion, how much do we hear his name on how he infected liberal politics and, gender studies and all of these different things that he proposed, DAs that just release criminals, which is probably responsible for our crime rate accelerating the way it has. Like, now you take George Soros at 35, 40 billion, now enter Musk on the opposite team at 400 billion. Yeah, I think Trump's going to have a lot of control over Congress. He's going to implement a lot of different things. That was a very good question. What else do we got there, Alexis?
What are your thoughts on a flat tax?
I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, I would love to see it, because it would probably be something that's consumption based. And right now, the lower and middle class are punished, and the wealthy are rewarded in our current tax system. But that's done so that politicians can get campaign contributions from the wealthy. I mean, you think about this. If somebody wealthy goes and buys an airplane under, you know, current programs or a building, we get to depreciate the asset. And, you know, the poor and the middle class are not going to go buy airplanes. They're not going to get to go depreciate assets. So if you think about a flat tax, the rich are never going to stop buying airplanes or Rolexes or things they like because they're rich, right? They're going to do that. But those are the things that in a consumption tax would, in theory, that's where you'd actually see the rich paying their fair share, okay? Like if you want to go into that like Democrat hyperbole crap, you know, I think in the current tax situation, the top 10% do pay 90% of the tax revenue. But if you were to reframe the tax system where it was consumption based, I think you'd see the rich paying an even higher share of the tax and the poor and the middle class getting a more fair shake. Do I think that's going to happen? Absolutely not. I think that'll happen about as soon as money is out of politics, which I don't think will ever happen. So, I mean, good question, and maybe what should happen. What else do you got, Alexis?
Aaron asked if you like long walks on the beach.
Yes, babe, I like long walks on the beach. I see that my wife is on the call. That's awesome.
Another one. Energy is flowing. How much more needs to be produced?
So I don't know that that's a question, I mean, that I can necessarily answer in a metric of like, say, million barrels per day or 10 million barrels per day. But if Trump is going to do what he's promising, like refilling the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, then he needs to drive enough energy into the market to get oil prices per barrel down, okay? You don't want to go and buy enough oil. And let me explain this. So for those of you that aren't not familiar with this, because I know left-wing media definitely doesn't cover it, Biden emptied the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Like, he drained it significantly. It's not empty, but it's significantly down from where it was. It was filled up, and that is technically a reserve that's to be used in wartime. Well, when Biden went to war on American energy in the first year and a half, 2 years of his presidency, and gas prices spiked over $5 a gallon on average, it was because the price of oil went to over $100 a barrel. Whenever that happens, that's a recessionary issue, okay? Anytime inflation is over 5%, you're 50% likely to get a recession. Anytime oil's over $100 a barrel, you're 50% likely to get a recession. Like, anytime both of those happen, you're 100% likely. Yet strangely, according to the news media, we never had a recession. And we did have over 5% inflation, and we did have oil over $100 a barrel. Well, Biden, right before the midterms, to lower the price of oil, to lower gas prices, released a ton of oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Right now, America's in a terrible situation because we've given away tons of our military equipment and tons of money to foreign countries and supported wars, and we've drained our Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which is supposed to be there to power our military during wartime and crisis, also that Democrats could win an election 2 years ago. And we need to refill that, and Trump has promised to refill that. Will he do it? I don't know. But the only way he's going to do that is to get enough oil pumped into the market to devalue the per barrel oil price. And once he gets that, say, down to $20, $25 a barrel, then he can refill the Strategic Petroleum Reserve without significantly impacting regular consumers and affordability. Right now, I think the biggest threat to America is affordability. I mean, the affordability of housing, the affordability of groceries. I mean, incomes have not gone up at the same speed as costs, and we need to get the average everyday consumer to be able to afford their lifestyle without credit cards and without buy now, pay later debt. And so that is what Trump needs to do. And so how much oil? I don't know, but probably several million barrels per day drilled. And I couldn't give you an exact number. Great question. Is there another question there, Alexis? These are really good questions.
Yes.
I like these questions. If you get stupid questions, ignore them. If you get the good questions, I'll at least provide my perspective, because I like to deal with people that think, not the people that just go watch Fox News or MSNBC or some other BS news outlet and literally quote that crap. Like, if I wanted to hear you, I'd go watch, like, you know, Rachel Maddow, or I'd go watch, like, what's that guy? Kill Me or whatever his name is. I can't remember his first name, but oh my gosh, Sean Hannity. Like, if I need to toe a line, I can go watch those shows. I don't need you to make those comments. Do we have any other smart questions?
One said, do you foresee any black swan events on the horizon like we had in 2020?
Do I foresee any black swan events on the horizon? I think we live in a market where there are several bubbles. I I don't know that I see any specific bubbles that could burst. I think that we came very, very close to a black swan event, to potentially a tactical nuclear weapon or a nuclear weapon being dropped in the last 4 years based on the mismanagement of geopolitics and negotiations with other countries. I honestly think that's the main reason why Trump won the election. I think you have inflation, which was a big one. You know, you hit Americans in their pockets, it hurts. You have the open border, which was also very inflationary because it cost tremendous government spending to support millions and millions of people that, you know, had nowhere to go, nothing to do, no work. We're providing phones, we're providing apartments. Like, there's markets where there's $2,000 apartments, and there's really enough apartments for everybody if we weren't housing thousands and thousands of migrants, and those apartments should be cut down, you know, in price by 20-30%. Are there black swan events that are potentially going to happen? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different bubbles out there. We still have a banking issue. We still have a commercial real estate crisis. Like, we still have interest rates so high that housing has stalled. I mean, housing is a major driver of labor. It might be 2 or 3% of GDP for the actual home builder, but when you look at everything that's produced that goes into housing, it's huge, okay? So housing being at a 35-year low when our population is higher than it was 35 years ago is a major, major, major issue. I don't see that recessing or going down in value, but I see potentially other issues with the amount of labor that is not at work working, being productive. Like, in an economy, what you need to measure is productivity. And when you're measuring productivity, like, you have to see what is the output of that economy. Well, if you were to back out government spending from our economy last year, it shrinks significantly. And remember, the government is not a productive entity, it is a regulatory entity. So if our government is 30 to 50% of our economy, that means that our economy is actually not really bigger than China's. It's just our spending is. So do I see black swan events? Yeah, there's a lot of potential issues that could come in and wreck us. But I think if you get a black swan event of any type, I mean, the worst one would be nuclear war, and I think hopefully we've avoided that. All the rest of them could be solved effectively by a Fed pivot and getting government spending in line, which looks to be what our leadership is trying to do now. So, very good question. Next question.
How often do you talk to M&A industry business leaders to see industry trends early?
How often do I talk to what industry leaders?
M&A?
Mergers and acquisitions industry leaders. I don't know that I specifically go talk to mergers and acquisitions people. Like, I mean, I have a friend who does mergers and acquisitions for quite a few different companies. I talk to a lot of commercial bankers, a lot of investment bankers, a lot of economists, a lot of different entrepreneurs in different fields. I don't know that it's specific to like M&A professionals, although I think they would have some of the same information. But I try to collaborate with different entrepreneurs. They're going to have different, you know, viewpoints on the market as often as I can. I mean, I don't know if you can tell by my giant head and my tiny shoulders, but I am a freaking nerd, and I like studying what's going on. And I'm not arrogant enough to think that I'm the only one with a viewpoint on things. So I love looking at the viewpoints of other people who are intelligent, who can generally see both sides of an equation. I love talking to people that aren't quickly triggered, that have ideas and thoughts based on some relevant fact. Go ahead. What's the next question?
What do you see happening with wages, disposable income? Are we at all-time high credit card debt?
Yes, we are at all-time high credit card debt. We have never been anywhere near the record high we are at now. I think what Trump is saying he's going to do, not necessarily what he's done, but what he's saying he's going to do with tariffs, will bring businesses and jobs back, and you'll see onshoring of manufacturing, okay? I think that will bring good, productive jobs back to the country if he does what he's saying he's going to do, and he does it in a balanced approach, and he doesn't try to do it all overnight. I think you'll see wages increase and catch up with inflation. You know, inflation's a big word, but people don't realize that inflation's a permanent thing. Like, we are a Keynesian society. I think Greenspan was the guy that told Yellen, God forbid that we would ever ever have a targeted inflation number, because she asked him, what's the target for inflation? Like, this is where we came up with our 2% number. And he said, God forbid we would ever announce this. God forbid the public would ever find out what it was. But if we had to pick one, it's 2%. Well, if you think about what inflation is at 2% or otherwise, inflation is effectively not goods going up. It's the value of the dollar going down, and the value of the dollar goes down as the supply of dollars goes up. So you print more dollars, dollars become worth less. If you print more dollars faster, dollars become worth less faster, thus you have more inflation. Inflation can be caused by rising wages, okay? If there's, say, an economic boom in some industry or an economic crash in another industry, because like the market is like many different cogs and gears that all turn simultaneously. It's not one thing, right? Inflation can also be caused by supply chain issues like we saw in COVID. Like that was the catalyst, the straw that broke the camel's back, but it wasn't the only driving factor. I see wages catching up probably for the next 2 to 3, maybe 5 to 10 years, depending on, frankly, the health of what our government does, okay? Our government has to balance spending. That is the biggest thing we have to do. And to do that, we need some level of common sense. Like, we need to stop having popularity contests and start having common sense contests in our elections. And, you know, if we can get Congress in line, we can get the Senate in line, and if Trump can react, intelligently and not emotionally, because he does tend to react emotionally. He's very intelligent. I don't think he's unintelligent, but I think he's also emotional, and he has a big ego. Then you'll see wages continue to go up. I mean, I think so far I'm bullish on his presidency. I was very anti-Biden. I was not pro-Trump because I just didn't see the intelligence of electing another 78-year-old after the, train wreck we saw last time we did that. But I am bullish over his first few days in office of what he's done with energy, and already the Israel-Hamas conflict looking like it's coming to an end. So there are positives. So hopefully that answers that question. I think wages are going to go up, but you need more productivity to go up. And sometimes to get productivity up, you need tax breaks. But if you're going to get tax breaks, the government's going to have to pay for that, which may mean that the External Revenue Service might come in and help with that. But you have so many moving parts here that if it's done intelligently, it's going to work wonderfully. And if it's done stupidly, it's going to crash and burn, and we're going to feel a lot of pain. There's going to be a recession, but at least that'll benefit real estate people. The Fed will pivot and we'll sell houses quickly. That's probably the longest, most confusing answer I've ever given, but hopefully it helps. All right, let's take 2 more questions before we shut this down and I go head home and see my kiddos.
Okay. How does balanced government spending impact wages? Another one, how are wages going up?
So balanced government spending is really, it's a global issue, okay? Right now, we're not the only country in the world with a fiat currency. Every country has a fiat currency. But right now, we have the most important reserve currency. Not the only reserve currency, but the most important. That reserve currency, if you go back, I think it's about 10 years, 70% of the currency in the central banks of any country would have been dollars, okay? 70 to 80. Now it's 57, okay? 56, 57%, which means central banks are no longer putting the value on dollars the way they did. Our reserve currency is our ability to effectively have trade done in the American dollar all across the world. Now, being a fiat currency where the dollar is not backed by gold, it's not backed by anything, it's effectively backed by the strength of the American economy. If our economy is to keep going down, if our governments keep spending more money, if we're going to continue running deficits of $2 trillion and more, then that's going to devalue our currency more and more and more. And when you have a balanced economy and central banks all over the earth who don't have any other realistic reserve currency to use, like they're not going to go use the Chinese yuan or the Japanese yen. Japan's economy is in worse shape than ours. They're probably not going to go use the euro, because what does Europe do? Well, they don't make anything. They literally buy everything. Their factory is China. Their bank is us. Their energy producer is Russia. Like, Europe is not a reserve currency you want to use if you want security and safety and everything else in your economic system, right? So we need to bring the dollar back globally, because when you do that, you bring investment to the country. When you bring investment to the country, because we are the most balanced, safe place for you to invest your money in our current stock market or businesses, or open a business, or buy property, or buy real estate because our government is running and intelligently, then that creates jobs, that creates opportunity, that creates wage gains, that creates all of that. So it's probably another long-winded answer, but the reason we need government to be intelligent for wages to continue going up is because anybody who's going to invest on American soil in America needs to know that their investment is going to have returns. When people invest on American soil in America, they create jobs. When there's more jobs created, there's more demand for labor. When there's more demand for labor, the value of labor goes up. So that's why it's good for wages. All right, last question.
Where is the world's largest auto manufacturing located?
Where's the world's largest auto manufacturing located? That's a really good question. I don't know that I know the answer to that. I mean, I would guess it's probably China. I would bet you China manufactures more cars on account of they have more people. I don't know the exact answer, but that's a good question. I'll go research that. All right, guys. I hope you all have an amazing day on purpose. We have been through just a whirlwind in the last year or two of what's going on in our markets, in our world. I think we're going to be blessed in real estate over the next 24, 36 months. I think we're going to see some hopefully good things in energy. I think we'll probably see some gains in stock, but be wary. There might be a recession coming the next 12 months. It would be in the government's best interest to refinance their debt at low rates. So if they can have a recession or a short one, or find a way to have a recession, a short one, and blame it on Biden, refinance their rates, it might be in their best interest. Wink, wink. I'm not necessarily predicting that because who knows what's coming. But I am looking forward to what I think will be one of the most exciting years in business and economics that we've ever seen. I mean, we've had a crazy radical political comeback under Trump. Let's see if America gets a comeback out of it too, or if we're going to just see more of the same, more crony capitalism, more BS, and more stuff. I will see you guys on a live next month. I hope you guys have an amazing day on purpose.